guys, my name is Jo Rogers and I'm the founder of NaviStar Legal, and today I have Christopher Thurn with me, who is from Alacrity. He's the founder of Alacrity. Indeed, Christopher, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And today we're talking about the business of law and the law of business and finding out a little bit about Christopher's journey. I would call you a serial entrepreneur, Christopher. Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Something like that, I suppose. Close enough.
Close to that. So why don't you tell us why you set up your first company? Because this is your second, right? Why did you set it up? And tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. So I set up my first business called ISM Capital, which is a capital markets boutique, in 2008. 2008 either being the smartest or the dumbest time to be starting up your own investment bank, but I did it with the CEO of Jefferies International at the time. And we really did that because we kind of saw the writing on the wall of the financial crisis and saw that change was coming, especially to bigger banks. And that it wasn't going to be a very good time sitting in a bigger bank, kind of desperately trying to hold on to your job and not really being able to serve your clients. So we set up ISM. We did very well out of that and ended up selling it 8 years later to another big U.S. investment bank. So that was kind of the first go round in terms of starting something up.
Was the sale planned like before you set up the company? Because I'm thinking of people who are, who knows if we're going into a recession, but predictions are we are. So there are going to be people thinking about this exact scenario, thinking about setting up a business. Is it a good idea? Is this, is this a sensible thing to do in a recession? Did you plan it? Did you say we're going to set this up and then we're going to sell, or was it just a bit more fluid than that, organic?
Yeah, it was much more organic for us. Our dream wasn't to create something that we could sell. There are lots of people out there who do kind of fund those businesses. I think what changed for us is the competitive landscape in many respects. So we got to a point where we were either going to have to do something much bigger in a different way, or we could sell the business. And for us, for a whole bunch of different reasons, really made sense to sell the business rather than try to do that next jump up. Although some of the folks that we sort of got started with in 2008 did make that bigger jump and doing very well today, but that wasn't the right choice for us.
Right. So as things went along, you were kind of making strategic decisions, and it just happened that this was, I'm assuming it was an offer too good to refuse.
Yeah, I mean, it was an offer, right? I mean, the art of negotiation is, nobody's ever overjoyed with the deal they got, or else you didn't do a very good deal. But yeah.
I've never heard that phrase before. I like it. So having done they had your first baby, you've had your first business, you've grown that, you sold it off. What did you do straight afterwards? Did you jet off on holiday? What was your celebration?
No, we didn't do much of anything. We were at work. We finalized everything on the Friday, and we had to go to work for the acquirer on the next Monday. So I think we had a few drinks on the Friday, but we were kind of all exhausted. The only fun thing that did happen for us was that our server actually started on fire the night before we were meant to sell the business. So that was an entertaining one. Trying to explain why all of our files were completely torched was an interesting experience. But that was about it. That
was the only exciting thing that happened. So how long was it after selling your first company that you got back in the saddle for Alacrity? What drove you back?
Yeah. So we worked for 3 years for the business that acquired us. But really, Alacrity I started working on almost immediately after we sold ISM. And I guess there was a long process of discovery and talking to a lot of different people and really figuring out where we thought we could make a difference before we actually got started on, hiring engineers, taking something to market, doing all those things. So spent a couple of years really looking at the landscape and figuring out what else there was out there to do. And then of course weighing up all the other options in terms of continuing on in banking or doing something else.
Were there any things that you did in your first company that you thought this time is going to be different. I am not doing it like that this time. The way I'm going to build it is going to be, were there any things that you're like, these are the ground rules now? There's no other way.
I think you always learn different bits and pieces. I think where we got, I would say probably the bigger lessons that I learned it from that perspective was how to make something repeatable. So we were a capital markets business. It's very lumpy business. A good year was doing 3 or 4 different things. A bad year was doing 1 or 2. And what I kind of learned from that was you need to make that process repeatable if you want it to be sustainable and to have a business that can really grow in a different way. So I really spent a lot of time at Alacrity thinking about how we actually go about making processes repeatable. How do we do sales in such a way that makes it just a sort of chalk and change so that every sale is much like the last one. How do we do product development in a way that's consistent over time and really can make us successful over time? What process can we do to make it repeatable so it's not just fluke? It's really a process that makes you successful. So that was a big thing.
And was that? I mean, I can understand. I know what you mean by lumpy. I'm kind of hearing the feast and famine. Like that's the phrase that comes into our. It's like there's loads happening, and then everything's super busy, and then nothing happens. And you've got to spend time getting the next kind of big win. Is that what you mean by lumpy? It's
yeah, that's right. And you spend a lot. I guess what I would term it is it's kind of like going from being sort of an artisanal baker to trying to make Twinkies, right? And they're 2 very different things. On the one, you can spend 6 hours making the most beautiful cake in the world, and that's great. The other is you got to make 5 million of these things. You got to have an assembly line approach, but it's scalable, right? So it's a very different approach and a very different mindset in terms of the kind of business you want to create.
And I guess what you didn't have in the first business was that software, because that's what Alacrity is, right? You have it's software as a service, as I understand it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about? I'm not going to guess.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
You describe what Alacrity does.
Yeah. So in a way, Alacrity kind of ties into that in essence. So Alacrity is a legal relationship management tool, and we help basically both law firms and clients get more value from their legal relationships. And we do that by structuring the process of interaction between the 2 sides so that clients can answer the question, who should they hire for counsel? How much should they pay? And do they get the service that they deserve? And on the other hand, law firms can understand their clients in a much better way to understand how to serve them better and then therefore win more business and win more work together. In some respects, I think what we want to help both in-house teams and law firms do is make that really successful interaction. We want to make it a lot more repeatable. I think a lot of what we hear about in the law is, it's all bespoke. It's all bespoke. It's all custom to the client. It's all individual. But we fundamentally don't think that's true, especially when it comes to client service. The advice might be, but the approach to client service doesn't have to be. And if you make it consistent, you make it repeatable, and you make it high quality all the time, then everybody's going to get to a better outcome. And that's really what we're trying to do.
How do you find, because I mean, your career has, so you're a non-lawyer.
Yeah, that's right.
Owner, you've then sold on a business. Now you're working in the legal space. Why did you choose to do that? Why law tech or legal tech? And what are you finding that is culturally different?
Sure.
To how you were working before?
So I guess part of the reason I picked the law, which I found interesting, was one, when I was a banker, I spent a lot of my time working with lawyers to do deals. So had a familiarity with what lawyers do. The other bit of it is I trained as an economist, and I look at the legal, the structure of the legal marketplace, and it kind of befuddles me. If you look at it, really, the business structures, the way that the law is delivered, all those other bits and pieces haven't really changed since the 1860s. And that's very much in contrast to almost every other professional service. Why are there 300 law firms that bill 300 global law firms that bill more than $500 million a year, whereas there's only 4 big accountancy firms? Why is that, right? What is it about the structure of the marketplace that means there's been no consolidation, that we're still looking at traditional partnerships and all those things? So that made me really, really interested, because it means that the structure of the marketplace is ripe in many ways for disruption. And I think you're starting to see that. You're starting to see that with the big 4 coming in. You're starting to see that with the alternative business structures. You're starting to see that with the, the Axioms and the Elevates and the United Lexes of this world. So that really had a lot of appeal to me, in the sense of maybe changing the economics of the legal industry. And I think, again, we're starting to see that in some pretty meaningful ways. I guess the other bit is, how is it different? I would say the law is very slow to change. And I think in particular, when you look at why people behave in the way that they do behave in the law, when you press people, a lot of times they say, well, because that's how we've always done it, or that's how we were trained, or that's what everyone else is doing. And it really overcoming that barrier and really helping people understand that just because it's always been done one way doesn't mean that that's the best way, or that it can't be done in a different way, or in fact that you can't change behavior of the people you work with to make everyone more successful. So I think that's been one of the biggest things for me is really overcoming that resistance to change, and really trying to help people see that actually we can make a difference. We can make a meaningful change without it being disruptive, or B, or B, it being negative to one side. And I think one thing that we talk about a lot is a lot of folks see a lot of the innovation that's coming in legal as being very adversarial to one side or another. Either it's really good for law firms, right, and they get one over on clients, or it's really good for clients and they get one over on law firms. We just fundamentally don't view the world that way. We're not zero-sum people. We actually think that there's ways and processes and things we can do together to make the relationships that people have better. And that's why, again, we come back to, we're a relationship management business. We're not here for one side to get one over on the other or save costs at the expense of the other. We're not interested in that. And that, I guess, is a holdover of sort of my previous businesses, which again were relationship businesses at the end of the day.
And really, I don't like the phrase zero sum, but I like that you can kind of see that as that's the thinking at the moment. It's either I win or you win, and therefore nobody really wins. And kind of taking that into a bit more of, I guess, the phrase collaboration. It's one of those overly used phrases, but it reflects exactly what you're saying right there. And I'm interested to see, so I want a bit of a question out of the blue, but if you were a law firm partner at a big law firm right now, what 3 things would you be doing differently that would place you in a better position for clients?
Sure. So first and foremost, I think the one place that you have to start there is that the vast majority of law firm partners have great relationships with their clients. But the flip side of that is, when we think we have a great relationship, we often miss some of the bits that we could be doing better. So very, very rarely do we ever hear that sort of people saying, oh, we don't like our partners. But what that does create is a bit of a false sense of security. And where we see that most vigorously, and probably the foremost thing that we try to do, is help provide transparency to your clients. And that means a whole bunch of different things. We had a situation the other day with a client where a bill had massively overrun. The partner had just thought, business as usual, we're going to deliver that to the client, and the client's going to be fine with it because that's how we've always done business. Well, the problem was that the client sort of understood why things happened the way it happened, but they were still shocked by the bill. They got shouted at by their CFO, and now they've soured the relationship between the two of them, right? Whereas there was an opportunity there for the partner to go, right, here's where we are on the clock. Here's why we've blown through our original budget. Just check in every week, every 2 weeks, provide that transparency so that your client is prepared for all the other stakeholders and stuff that they're in. It's no longer enough. And I think this is something that a lot of law firm partners don't really recognize is it's not enough for your internal stakeholders, your in-house teams, to go to their other business partners and go, well, the law just costs what it costs. That doesn't wash anymore. So that would be the first thing I would say is really trying to create that culture of transparency. And really that doesn't have to be radical, but it's almost sort of common sense.
Why do you think at the moment they're not providing transparency? Do you think it's because, tell me why. Why is that not happening?
So two things. I think the culture of the law has a massive problem talking about money.
Right.
I think that is really to the detriment of everyone involved because, everybody's a grown up, right? Everybody everybody understands why things are the way they are. There is no reason not to be comfortable talking about money. I remember numerous times in my banking days when, a partner would phone me up after a transaction had happened and say, hey, I know I told you this was going to cost, $300,000 and I'm going to send you a bill for $450, right? And it would shock me. And I go, well, why didn't you talk to me about that at the time? Or why didn't you give me a heads up? Or why didn't you keep me informed about what had happened? And the answer was always, well, we were in the middle of a deal. I didn't have time to talk about money with you. I didn't think it was important. We were just doing what you asked. So we assumed you knew, right? Well, that's not true. And by the way, I respect that, when deals are happening or whatever, people get busy. But if that's going to be the case, then it's incumbent on the law firm to set up a process to inform the clients that doesn't have to go through the partner. And that's the other thing that we talk about a lot is making law firms successful by using the processes and the structure that they have in place. For example, on our platform, I don't want partners filling in the proposals that go to clients. I want your business development team doing that. I don't want the partner filling in the WIP updates and those other billing bits and pieces and all that stuff. I want your billing teams to do that. Use the structure around you to make you more successful. And we have a great diversity of experience on our platform between those partners who absolutely will not do that. They want to put in everything themselves and they refuse to use the bits around them. And other partners who are set up structurally to go, yeah, I only need to engage with our platform once every 2 weeks to give my client a small update. Everything else is coming from the other bits and pieces. You know what? It's a well-oiled machine and I get to spend my time being a lawyer. And we really are trying to push people to be the latter there. Good client service doesn't mean that you're the only one who touches the client a lot of the time. And that again is culturally something that people really struggle with sometimes.
There's a bit of competition there, isn't there, where people are scared almost of allowing other people to connect with the client, but actually one person can't do all of that. It's not possible. And there's something about building that business around oneself, I guess every firm is obviously its own business, but even each partner is its own business, and kind of building what you would build as a business leader. You've got to build that support in every way, the delegation, the processes. So you mentioned two. So we've got transparency, we've got processes, and
yeah. And third, I'd probably say, listen to your clients. And that always sounds super trite, but the reality is we get told all the time by our clients that if law firms just ask, for example, right, how much is that client spending in total on the law, and in what areas, right? If I as a partner ask that question, I have an opportunity to cross-sell. I have an opportunity to make progress with that client. We hear over and over again that's not, that they aren't being asked, that our clients aren't being asked, and therefore law firms are shooting in the dark. Or The other one is we always ask clients to give law firms an indication when they start a matter of what's important to them. Is it, this is the most timely thing, we got to have it tomorrow? Is it bet the farm work and we don't care what it costs as long as we get it right? Or are we super cost conscious? Or, you know, do we need the highest degree of expertise? And I think part of that's incumbent on clients, but it's also incumbent on law firms as well, is to say, right, what does success look like before we get started? And being really, really rigorous about that.
And that's an interesting business point, really, because it is seeing the whole as the quality, the time, the expertise, and I don't know who says this, but saying you can actually only have two of those. But what I almost feel like what law firms attempt to do is provide all three, which therefore, you know, that means that the cost is there, but actually, yeah, the client is the person who has to just determine their own risk profile, really, and say, well, actually, I want this at a lower rate today. I need it to come in on budget no matter what, or I absolutely don't care on the budget. You go for it, and yeah, like you say, bet the farm on it. So yeah, there's and that what I've experienced, certainly in the work that we do, it takes some time, and it takes time to build in those processes, which often when it's like, come on guys, we need to move forward, that piece gets skipped, and it's actually a really important piece of structure to understand what's required. And it's not just a piece of structure at the beginning, it's something that needs to be fed in throughout, you know, because people change. And I think lawyers have such a bad reputation for, like, we'll go for the higher, you know, we're going to bill you as much as we can, but actually I don't think that's the intention. Like you said, I think deals get started, deals get moved on, they were like, well, we've got to get this right. Whereas actually listening to the client allows you to say, oh, well, actually that's not as important to them, this piece is really important to them, and by doing so, adding value by not having to charge those pieces that are not relevant. So yeah, I can see. Do you want to share a little bit about what Alacrity does and how it does it? Because I think it would be interesting, certainly, because I also want to kind of highlight the fact you're working with both sides of the equation, aren't you? You're working with the law firms, but you're also working with the in-house teams and bringing them together.
So maybe to make that in a concrete example. So we take a matter, we help you instruct, put together a proposal for a law firm so that the law firm knows what they're doing. And to your point earlier, you know, you said that it can be hard to communicate that, you know, whether we need the gold standard or whether we need something else. It doesn't have to be hard. If you have a preference selector when you create every matter, and that's a required field, right? You have to select it before you go out to external counsel. Therefore, external counsel knows, and then we're in good shape. So what we do is we help you structure and process the upfront instruction of counsel. We then compare the proposals that you receive from external counsel so you can see quick and easily who you'd like to select for that matter. Once a matter is live, we monitor it going forward, including things like budget, progress, and those other elements. We do that in a little bit of a different way than a strict accounting tool would or an e-bill tool would. And then at the end, we get the feedback on it. So we get qualitative, quantitative feedback. And what that allows us to do is package up a whole bunch of qualitative and quantitative data that helps you make better decisions going forward about who you want to work with and who's delivering the most value for you. And it also encompasses things, really importantly, like diversity. So we can capture who's actually working on your matters in terms of their diversity, and who's meeting those objectives for you, as well as more mundane things like who's coming in on budget and also who's achieving specific results for you. So it's, again, we look at it in the entirety of that relationship piece. What are the different elements of that relationship that are important, and how do we make those better? And we try to use a whole bunch of structured process to help people make that happen.
So I heard data, helping me make decisions. That's what I heard Alacrity does. That's great.
That's what we do. Well, it's more than just the data. It's the process, right? We always used to say in banking when it came to regulatory stuff, right? It's the process that protects you. If you go through a rigorous process every time, and by the way, our process is actually normally quicker than sending someone an email to instruct them.
Yeah.
You just go through the process, right? You know you've hit all the bits that are important. Therefore, you're going to get a better outcome by default because you know you're going to have consistency across what you're doing. And we think that's very, very important when it comes to managing those relationships and indeed, making those relationships better over time.
I've got one final question for you, and it will be a quick one because I'm aware of time, but I wanted to ask you about business leadership and being a business leader, particularly in these times. Top three suggestions to people who are in a position of responsibility at these times. Like, what would you say in terms of management of your team?
Sure. So first and foremost, again, is we kind of live the same stuff that we put out in our product. So the first thing is transparency, right? Like, it's super important to be transparent, and that means warts and all. So don't sugarcoat it when things get rough and changes are going to have to be made. Don't hide behind it, but also magnify the success that you have, right? When someone does something, call it out and make sure everyone knows. The second is really spend time with each other. So, in times like this, it can be easy to become disconnected from everybody if you're not sitting in the office together, you're not using your normal modes of communication. So we do Friday drinks and morning coffees and stuff like that. And it's a good way to just see each other, right? And we think that's really important. And third, I think is probably, be aggressive. So we talk a lot about how we can use this time productively, and really leaning into what we're trying to do when we do have the opportunity to change things up a bit.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher. I would love to hear, how can people who are watching, whether you're in a law firm or in-house counsel, how do they get in contact with you? What's the best method of getting in front of you, really?
Sure. So feel free to email me at chris.thurn@alacritylaw.com. Look us up at www.alacritylaw.com, or reach out to us on LinkedIn, Alacrity Law, and you'll see our company page. And we'd love to have a chat with anybody who's interested.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher. I am so excited to see Alacrity grow. I feel like I've even, the people that I know that have been around since the beginning, and I'm just loving watching you guys getting out there, and I really want this time of aggressive, if you say be aggressive, like of being aggressive to really stand you guys in good stead. I think it'd be great to have some success stories from this time. So for all of those of you that are interested in learning more about the business of law and the law of business, you can subscribe below, and we'll be putting out similar videos. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Christopher, for your time, and see you guys soon. Bye.